Well, this, my friends, is something we never expected to be showing you, and something we never expected to have to do. Here, in front of me, we've got a lovely shiny white scupper and bulwark. We've got a completely fixed hull to deck join. And if you're wondering, like I was, how you get from replacing 2 sections of Genoa track to this around the entire boat, I'll let Julian explain.
Well, as you know, if you've watched our previous videos, we decided to remove the Genoa tracks connected to the hull by 70 bolts. When I removed said Genoa track, I discovered the poor condition of the hull to deck join. So some of the things I found initially were cracks. Underneath the cracks there was rotten timber, which had been used in the manufacturing process, and below that a lot of moisture. The only way we were going to be sure of the integrity in the hull to deck join is by cutting the whole thing out, the whole perimeter of the boat, see what we had. Basically 80 to 90% of the whole join had that sort of damage, and we were left with no option but to repair it. So that's what we did.
This is Brilliant 2, a Kelly Peterson 44 built in 1978. This is us, the Smallwoods. And this is the story of our long overdue boat refit. Welcome along for the ride.
If you're wondering why this was so important and why we had to take a year of our lives to do this job, this is the reason. So I'm sitting in an unrenovated part of the boat. This is the aft head. There is rotten timber, rotten veneer. Have a look at this, would you? This is why we started doing the refit in the first place. Up here, you'll see more of the same. And as it turns out, a lot of the water was coming from the hull to deck join. If you've watched our summer sailing series, and if you haven't, then go back, watch it, it's a cracker. You'll see that we had a fantastic time sailing up and down the Queensland coast. What you won't see is that Julian and I spent most of that time sleeping in a wet bed. It was the rainy season and it rained, and all that water made it into the boat. Now that we've actually repaired that hull to deck join, it's gone. We've had cyclones, we've had lots of water, rain come and go, and the bed's not wet anymore. And that's not the only damage it caused. Anyway, on with the show. In case you haven't seen our last video, when we talk about the hull to deck join, this is what we mean.
This is a cross section of the area that we're talking about. Here you can see there's a plywood core to the deck. The underside of the deck is glassed into the hull. Here's the top of the hull. On a Peterson, this is about ½ an inch thick, 12mm thick right here. The bulwark is formed by the inside moulding of the deck, which is dropped into the hull, and they filled the gap with plywood.
As we discovered while removing our Genoa tracks, water had been leaking into that plywood, and it wasn't in such great shape anymore, not to mention the cracks we found from a 45-year lifetime of wear and tear.
Now this could be a major source of a leak here. Oh, here we go. Look at this closely. This has definitely had a knot. There's some cracks here. The deck liner comes to there. Then that's a filler over the top, and it's all cracked. Looks like the crack starts here. Crack runs along here, through 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 here, up to here. Repair all of that. Boats, it's always a bigger job than it looks.
Then there were the screws.
These screws are the source of leaks down the bulwarks and into the inside of the hull. One of the many sources of leaks. So I'm removing them all. Another one gone. I decided that we've got to take the whole cap rail off. The cap rail screwed on every 6 inches, 150mm, all the way around the boat. That's like 100 feet. The whole lot's going to come off. I'm going to do it in stages. I've just loosened up this one, taken the screws out, and we're going to lever it up, and then I'm going to seal. I'll seal this section. I've got some materials this morning which I'm going to use, some high-tech modern materials, not wood. Now I'm going to inspect along here for cracks between the deck join and the hull, and I can already see some cracks and some screw holes with corrosion around them. Not good. Anyway, at least we know what we're working with now. Oh, it's coming off. This is it. I've got the other end tied off so it doesn't fall in the sea. Oh, there we go. And that's what's underneath. Of course, the fair leads will have to come out and make sure they're sealed around there. The cleats will have to come off. Well, I've just removed the starboard aft section of cap rail, and I'll just run you through the myriad of problems, multiple problems with water getting in underneath this cap rail and into the inside of the boat. And for a start, this is the aft starboard corner. We've got screw holes here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screw holes, and they're just plugged from above, and of course they're not sealed. There's no sealant around them. There was old sealant over all of this. There's another one. These are probably the holes that hold the cap rail on. These holes here, which are every 6 inches as well, they actually were used to hold the pieces of timber that they've got lower down in this bulwark in place while they put the thing together. Nearly every one of them, well, a lot of them are corroded and have been leaking into the bulwark. There's another one there, another hole. There's a bit of bad fiberglass here which is just peeling away. It's all got to be fixed. There's 2 more holes there. There's another hole. This is before we've even got to the holes for the Genoa track. Another hole, another hole, another hole, another hole, another one, another one, another one. And then you get to the cracks as well. The deck is joined to the hull with this fill, or it's sealed with this filler, and there's multiple cracks. There's a crack here, crack there, more holes. There's another crack forms along here. So there's no choice but to dig this filler out and reform this join. All Petersons will be like this, some worse than others. There's a crack runs all the way along here. There's a crack there, look at that. That's not a crack in the hull, that's just the top of the hull here is actually chamfered at about a 30-degree angle so that the filler fills right the way across here. Anyway, here's more cracks, cracking, cracking, cracking. We clean the whole lot up and backfill it, and that's got to be done all the way around the boat. There's no other way. Adding to strength and making it watertight. I started cutting away the join line between the hull and the deck in the bulwark here, and I started at the stern because it's in the shade mainly, and I think I've found what could be a pretty good source of leaking into the aft cabin. Anyway, this is a fair lead and goes through here, and just chop this timber away, and the timber's damp and pretty soft, and I think water could have been seeping through from here. Anyway, I'm going to cut this out right now, take this apart, see what's in there. Here is where we're at. This is the area where the teak cap rail was split in two, and the boat sometime in its life had had a big impact. What's happened here is the hull to deck join has split, water's got in, and over the years has turned wood into mush. So the solution to fix this has been to take all the timber out of this section here. Hopefully it's not as bad elsewhere, although I know I'm going to find some more, and I'm going to backfill the inside of this with reinforced epoxy resin. It's going to be reinforced with microfiber. What I've done is dug everything out to a depth of 2 inches deep, 50 mil deep, and that's going to rejoin the hull and the deck together. What I've also got to do is this area here is where the turning block for the Genoa used to be, and this is where we're going to put the chain plates through this section here. So in this section, you probably can't see it, I've dug out the timber all the way down to the bottom of the bulwark, and that whole area from like there to there is going to be solid epoxy and fibre, so it can't crush. There's going to be a fair bit of tension on here and on the bolts. I don't want that to crush, so that's going to be solid. The top 2 inches here is going to be solid, and the only screws that will go into this now are the screws that will fix the timber cap rail onto the top of the bulwark, and those will only penetrate 3/4 of an inch or maybe an inch in. I've got 2 inches to play with, so there won't be anything that will go through this bulwark into the boat anymore, and hopefully should eliminate all of our leaks. Cross fingers. So I spent most of the day digging out the old wood in this section of the bulwark, and I prepped it for the resin to go in, the epoxy and microfiber. I've sanded down the inside of the glass on both sides, dug the channel out to 2 inches deep all the way along, except for here it goes down to about 4 inches deep. As you can see, this is where one of the chain plates is going to go, and I've taped up around it to minimise the chance of any resin dripping on the hull, and I'm going to go and mix up some epoxy and get this little section done. I'm just going bit by bit here. I want to seal as I go in case we get a lot of rain, and I'll just have to cover this up tonight. I'm using West System, seems to be the best there is. Got the slow hardener, no point in using the fast hardener up here, go off before you can use it. Well worth spending the money on these pumps. This is a 5-to-1 mix, so 1 stroke of this pump on the hardener is the right 5-to-1 ratio to go with the resin, so it's 1-for-1. You can't really get it wrong. This is my measurer for the 413 fibre structural powder, and I've worked out that one of these full of the powder equals the 13 pumps on each dispenser here. Seems to be the right consistency. I want it to just flow so it drops down into the slot and has the maximum amount of microfiber in it for strength. Quite warm this afternoon, this will go off quite quickly. So I've just put the 3rd load of epoxy in here. It's got to be done in stages because it does go off pretty quick in this temperature as well, even though it's a cool day for us today. It's still about 28 degrees, something like that. So it has to go in stages. You can't get it all in one go. You just won't do it in time. And it also generates quite a bit of heat. So I can feel the heat coming through the side of the hull here and on the inside. Although at the bottom, where the layers went in first, it's starting to cool down a bit. Anyway, I'm going to let this tack off and then it'll build up its heat, and while it's doing that I'll just get the next and hopefully last layer done. This is a load bearing area, so I've got quite a liquid mix. Apparently it's a bit stronger when there's less fibre in it. Just liquid enough to pour in there and soak into the remaining timber. It should be pretty strong, coupled with the fiberglass hull and the fiberglass deck liner. It's all pretty solid, and it's about 40mm thick. Now we're down in the starboard quarter where the side of the hull joins the transom. There's a fair bit going on here. I've got a few things to remove. There's 2 cleats that go through the bulwark, bolt right through. There's a fair lead here which I've started removing. That's got to come off. Another cleat here, that's got to come off so that I can chop out all the old timber in the join. and backfill it. So whilst my epoxy's still going off over here, I'm going to let this cool down a bit. It's very hot before I put the next layer in, and meanwhile I'm going to remove these. If you've got these and you've never had them out, I suggest you do it. There's a safety string there in case the thing fell out. Now, it hasn't rained since last week, and this is damp underneath the sealant, and this is the source, or one of the sources, of the leaks in the aft cabin, particularly on the starboard side. So we're going to fix that. You look through the top here, you can see quite poor lamination here. We're going to have to clean all this up and fix it so it doesn't leak again. What I'm doing here is backfilling around where the fairlead fits, so the bronze fairlead goes in here. I've already filled underneath here with some fairly thick mix, and now I'm going to backfill up the sides in here. So what I'm doing is I'm just taping up with paper tape and forming a little wall in there with the tape, which is effectively the shape of the fairlead, or the hole that the fairlead goes through. And I'm going to tape up here, and then I'm going to do a mix which is slightly running, and backfill around here. It should form a complete bond with what's already there. Anyway, let's see how we go. So it's a lovely day down on the marina, and today I'm going to be dry fitting the refurbished teak cap rail back onto the bulwark, which has all been filled and sanded. And I'm just dry fitting at this stage because we're going to be painting the inside of the deck here and the bulwark whilst we've got it all open. So I'm going to be dry fitting all the fittings back on, the stainless steel cleats and fairlead and my new chain plates, just to make sure everything fits properly. And if I drill all these holes now, then I can't stuff up the new paintwork when we come to put them back on. They'll just bolt straight back on with sealant. So I'm just working out what screws we're going to use, and then I'll go and buy some. It's going to use a fair few, which I probably don't have.
A few moments later.
Right, the cap rail is on, just dry fitted, all screwed on, all the screw holes done, and now I'm going to work on putting the cleats back on. So these are the original holes. These are completely resin filled. The epoxy resin mix comes down 2 inches below the top of the bulwark, so these are completely backed up and encapsulated. Now these lower ones, I've drilled these out to about 1.25 inches diameter, and that's backfilled with epoxy and fibre mix right through to the hull on the other side. So where the cleat's bolted on here, even if the seal went around the bolt, it wouldn't get into the hull because this is epoxy filled. You should do this with all deck fittings, and that's what we've been doing as we've been rebedding stuff. Now here's the original holes here, and I want to make sure they line up with the original holes on the outside of the hull. So what I'm going to do is put a smaller drill. In this case it's a 3.5mm drill. I'm going to put this through till I know that it's just short of the hull on the other side, and then I'm going to drill through from the other side, and when these line up reasonably well, then I'll go bigger and bigger with the other drill bits until I get up to my, I think it's 5/16 bolt hole size, and then I won't have a won't have the hole coming out in the wrong place on the other side of the hull. I've got my holes drilled out here. As a precaution, we always put a bevel inside the screw hole. It's going to be sealed with sealant. It just gives a bit of extra sealant around the bolt there. Not putting sealant on now because this is a dry fit of these parts. Bulwark's a little bit thicker here. It varies so much. It's just the construction techniques of the day. Luckily my bolts are all long enough to cope with anything. I've got to come back and sand these gutters. We've got to get them ready for paint while we've got the cap rail off and these fittings off. Just for now, get everything working. Just unbolt it, lift the deck fittings up, do a lightning paint job with Shaz, and bolt it all back together again. Right, on to the next bit. Good morning. Today I'm going to remove the taff rail, it used to be called. This is a cap rail along the top of the transom, and it sounds very hollow in there all the way along here. I'm expecting to find some rotten timbers or timbers that aren't actually there anymore. It does have a lot of screw holes in it. I'm hoping that the rail will come off in one go and be in fairly reasonable condition, so I don't have to make a new one. But we got some good weather for the next few days, so yeah, I'm going to open this bit up.
Unfortunately, instead of getting better the further away we got from the bulwarks where the Genoa tracks had been, things continued to get worse.
See the joint here, the glue failed a long time ago, so it would have been leaking. Oh dear, oh dear, oh my god, wait till you see this. Oh man, this is the sealant. Look at this, it's encouraging in a way. When you have a look at this, you'll see why the aft cabin is more like a swimming pool. Look at this, look at that. You can see how it's all muddy in here. It's because rainwater has been coming in and washing dirt in, and that's completely separated all the way along. Crack all the way along the transom. Look at that. This is well worth doing, this is. Right, I'll get this bit off now. Well, the transom taff rail is off, and as we suspected, it's cracked. There's a crack which just gets worse and worse. Just stick my little finger in there. Lots of holes and worse. And this is pretty bad. Look at this. Look at that. All this 45-year-old filler, it's got to come out, and it's got to get the same treatment, being backfilled with epoxy and microfiber, as I did on the rest. No wonder we got a wet bed. It doesn't smell like rot, it just smells musty. There's so many screws they've used to hold all this together during manufacture. This is the filler they use in the top, 1/2 inch deep. Nothing. There's the rotten wood. Break that up, vacuum it out. Can't really do this with any other tool apart from just chiseling it out. If you had a grinding wheel, you really can't get it deep enough in there because of the narrow gap. And it takes a long time to do it because you can't use the power tools on it. It sounds very hollow here, and I didn't think there's going to be anything inside it. It's supposed to be timber in there, and sure enough, all that's in there is, well, it looks like soil really. It looks like something you buy at the supermarket to put your tomato plants in. It's a completely dissolved wood. So this has been leaking rainwater in for 45 years, and that's what it does. Yes, potting mix, that's the word I'm looking for. And make good potting mix. All that's in here used to be wood, has now just turned to, actually there's a bit of wood. The rest of this is rotted away, and it has become mulch basically. So I'm chopping it all out. Chisels, screwdrivers, whatever works. Chop it all out until I'm just left with the deck skin and the hull skin. So this is what my work area looks like after a typical 3 or 4 hour chopping away. Boat work is not clean. So I've just spent the morning chopping the final bits of timber and old fiberglass etc. out of the join between the hull and the deck at the transom. We've gone down the full depth of the bulwark, which is about 5 inches in the places where the wood was rotten, and I've gone a minimum of like 2.5 inches everywhere else, and I'm about to pour in my first couple of layers of epoxy. There's a fair few voids in there, so I'm going to do this one just thick enough to pour. I expect it to heat up a fair bit because there's some damp wood down there still. You just can't dig it all out. You'd have to go down to the underside of the deck, and you can't really get any tools down there. There's still some good timber in there, believe it or not, and we're going to fill in on top of that. Now, well, you can see in there, but that's the full depth of the bulwark here. I'm just going to do a sealing layer first, seal it off, and if it does rain, it's not going to carry on getting wet in there. It's very important to key up fiberglass when you're going to glue anything to it, and the furthest I could get my vibration saw blade down there was about 2.5–3 inches. Epoxy has very good adhesion qualities on virtually anything, so even though it hasn't been keyed up further down, it'll still stick to it. The top of the transom is all filled in now. It's actually going to be joined now, whereas before it was not joined at all. Amazing, the boat had really held together properly, considering the degree of attachment and the strength of it between the hull and the deck. It's amazing.
I'd like to say things improved as we moved forward, but you guessed it, they didn't. Everywhere we looked, it was just more of the same, or worse.
You can see cracks here. Water would have been going straight through here, straight down into that aft cabin. As we go further forward here, it's not too bad here, and then start splitting apart. This is likely to be where, over the life of the boat, 44-year-old life of the boat, it's had various collisions. A lot of these were charter boats. I don't know about this one. Any water that gets in here, and water has been getting in because we can see the corrosion around the screws. A lot of the screws just pulled out. So rainwater, seawater just goes straight down. Here it's actually getting worse, and it's getting pretty bad. This is midships of the boat now, and you can see here where the stuff has been replaced. This is not original sealant, so some dodgy repairs have been done here. It was very badly cracked.
So in the end, the entire cat rail was removed and the entire hull to deck join was dug out. It was a painstaking task, over about 30 metres or 100 feet of perimeter overall, but the odd chat with a passerby often broke the monotony, and the words of encouragement always helped.
There you go, mate, you've got a bit of driving from it.
This is just the deck. The deck comes along here and goes up there.
Right, okay.
And the hull, that's the hull, and the hull's solid. The hull gets thicker as it goes down. But the way they joined the hull to the deck was like this, so it's glassed inside.
Yeah, okay.
But there's all these screws that go in here. This bit isn't actually too bad, it's not too damp. Yeah. But as you get further down there,
the weather it is.
That just gets wetter and wetter.
Yeah, right.
Basically I dig out 2 inches,
yep,
and then fill it with epoxy, structural epoxy.
Yeah, nice.
With fibres in it.
Yep.
Makes it stronger, it makes it waterproof. This is 45 years old, 1978.
Wow. Okay, nice. Almost as old as I am. It's not
as old as me.
Okay.
See you later.
Take care, mate. Yeah, have a good afternoon.
Yeah, you too. So you don't take long. Once you get the technique sorted. Well, best of luck with that. I'll see you later.
That entire void then had to be filled with the same epoxy and microfiber mix you've seen previously. There was more formwork to do around the myriad of openings like fair leads, which are the holes for dock lines and mooring ropes, and scuppers, which are the holes through which any accumulated water runs out. By the time we'd finished, we had a completely reformed and totally strengthened bulwark around the entire boat. Even though this was an unexpected, and I'm not going to lie, unwelcome task, it was a job that definitely needed doing, and worth it in the long run. So obviously, once we'd gone to all that effort, we couldn't just reinstall a damaged teak cat rail on top of a bulwark and scupper area that was also in need of some serious TLC. So this story doesn't end there, but to see what happened next, you'll need to stay tuned. So subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button so you'll know when the next video drops, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.